I've got Ryan Anderson here, and we are going to be covering using simulations to improve mental health. But first, a quick introduction. Not long ago, if you had told people that patients suffering from chronic anxiety, depression, or self harm could have their lives improved by participating in a space mission reminiscent of Star Trek, they would have not believed you. These days, however, Dr. Ryan Anderson from Telos University does that kind of thing all the time, and with incredible results. Here to warm our hearts and provide insight into how the metaverse can change and save lives is Dr. Ryan Anderson.
Thank you. Well, we'll kick this off. So, when I talk with people in the mental health field and I let them know that I do group therapy using a pretend spaceship, the first two reactions I get are, "What?" And then, "Why?" But after I walk them through and they're able to see where we can go, the question they're asking is, how can we do this too? There's been so much interest in this. So I want to talk with you guys a little bit about what I do in mental health and how I use simulations as a part of that. So, one thing just to kind of give some background, I think everyone is aware that mental health concerns are a big issue and they are growing. Already, before we hit 2020 and the lockdowns and everything that went on, about 1 in 4 people at any point in time were experiencing a significant mental health issue. And what we've seen is that ever since 2020, those rates are just climbing. And finding new ways to reach out and help fulfill the mental health needs of all these people has been a really pressing issue. And to be honest, the field of mental health has been falling behind. And part of what we're doing is looking at what we can do to find more ways to reach out to more people and engage them in ways that will improve their mental health. So, where I fall into all of this, I am the co founder of a program called Telos U. Telos has two different campuses. One is for teens, one is for young adults. For any of you who are in Utah or close by and would love to come by and see us, I would love to invite you to come and take a look at what we do and how we do it. But we formed Telos U in particular because we saw that there was a whole segment of people with some mental health challenges that, even though they were receiving what were established as the best practices in the field, still were not having the kinds of results that they needed. So we've spent many, many years doing research and development into what was going on. And one thing that's very common to most of our students is most of them have some kind of an information processing difference. So maybe they have a low processing speed or small working memory, or perhaps they're on the autism spectrum or have significant ADHD. So, as we have been working, we've discovered a lot of things that allow for treatments to work for people who fall into this category, where other standard treatments don't typically work very well. But as we were working on this, one of the things that we recognized is by the time people get to us, they've usually gone through a lot of different efforts at mental health care and haven't gotten the results that they need. And so there is a treatment fatigue of not wanting to go to just one more session or one more therapy group. Please don't put me in another social skills group. Please don't put me in some other psychoeducational group where I'm going to learn about resilience. This is one of the things that we've got. So we realized that if we were going to work with this particular group of young men and young women, we needed to find ways to address things, first of all, that felt fresh and new and engaging, but second of all, that could approach things in a different way than the way they've already been approached that wasn't working for them. And as we've looked about, we've come up with quite a few things, and a piece of that has to do with something that I experienced much younger in my life. For those of you in Utah, you may know something about this guy, Victor Williamson. He is an educator who, about I think 32 or 33 years ago now, had this audacious idea that it would be much better to try to teach his students by creating engaging simulations than just doing standard classroom things. And at the time, his approach was very low tech. He had cardboard and an overhead projector to start with, and began making these funny little space adventures to teach everything you could imagine. The results he got, even with that low-tech intervention, were so amazing that eventually he was able to get funding and build not one, but several actual starships. And the academic results were astonishing. But even more than that, even though this was originally designed as an educational endeavor and was very effective as such, one of the things that we noticed in the Krista McAuliffe Space Education Center was that we were seeing psychosocial benefits as well. Participants and volunteers who were anxious became calm and self possessed. People who struggled from depression saw an elevation in their mood. People with ADHD developed executive function and the ability to focus and manage their attention, and so on and so forth. Students on the autism spectrum found belonging and developed social skills, and none of these were the intended outcomes of what Victor had designed, but they were just kind of the unintended but very welcome consequences. Well, my life progressed, and I went on and got a PhD and realized, wait a second, I'm a scientist. I can go back and take a look at what's going on here that was working. And we realized that in these simulators, we had inadvertently created something very powerful that was a combination of several different factors. One, it was a virtual CrossFit gym for executive functions. Even things as simple as undocking the Starship required not only teamwork, but several crucial executive functions. And by doing these things over and over again, there was a generalizability. Second of all, inside the simulations, we were actually evoking real emotions. Just like you experience when you go to the movies or read a good book, you know the people aren't real, but you get into a state of suspension of disbelief. So suddenly you're crying when Iron Man has sacrificed himself to save the world, when you realize that Robert Downey Jr. is alive and well, but that doesn't change the emotional response that you have. In these simulations, we can quickly develop and create any emotion you can think of. We work with everything from anger to insecurity to anxiety to prejudice. You name it, we can evoke it and work on it. And one of the things we've found in the field of therapy is that working with emotions in real time while you are having them is far more effective than trying to talk about them in retrospect, sitting on a couch in some therapist's office. So in these simulators, you had a real world, real time, real emotion evoking situation that you could bring any kind of emotion in that the person was struggling with. So, for example, one of the things we've done at Telos is we are operating inside our own sci fi universe for our stories. And one of the things I've done is I've created different alien species that have different personality types based on personality types that our students tend to struggle with. And then we've purposely placed our students in a position where they're not superpowers, where they can just blow away anyone who annoys them at any point in time. And so, what do they have to do? They have to learn interpersonal skills. They have to learn perspective taking, both with their other crew members, but also with the alien species. And they find ways to be able to get to where they need to go. So, this is a wonderful exposure response prevention therapy. There's also aspects of psychodrama and social skills training and all these things that happen. But the good news is people come in, they're having fun, they're engaged, they're wanting to do it. And all of those are big indicators of positive outcomes for this as a type of therapy. So, with all that, I wanted to share with you, there's so many stories I could tell about how we do this, but I want to share with you a story about one young man and the experiences he had working with these kinds of immersive simulations. So this young man came to us at Telos U, and he kind of had, unfortunately, like all the strikes against him. For those of you who are familiar with adverse childhood experiences, he pretty much had all of them. He was adopted out of a Russian orphanage. He had physical disabilities. He was in chronic pain. He was wheelchair bound. He had PTSD from being abused, on and on and on. And when we first met this young man, I'll call him Jake. Jake was someone who lived his life apologizing for his existence, had tried suicide on a couple of occasions because that seemed like that was the best bet for him. And in any social situation would just shrivel with the idea that I have nothing to offer the world. I am broken and I am insufficient for anything. And when we first introduced him to our simulator here at Telos U, which is known as the Hyperion, his first thought was, I'm not even going to go inside. This is too much. And we started off just by bringing him in and just turning it on and help him go through and figure out, okay, here's one station, one simple station Could we have you just sit in here and watch other people for the first time? And we eventually got him to try one little piece. And it was just, okay, I didn't kill everyone with what I just did. That's fantastic. That's better. It's just not failure. I'll settle for that. But was step by step where he slowly began inside the simulator to find his voice, to share ideas, to work through his sense of inadequacy, to begin to see his value in the very small context of our simulation. And what was happening and what we see all the time is that this was also playing over into his life outside. We were always drawing the connection between what he experienced there and where he could bring it into the real world experience. Well, to take a very long story and to shorten it, finally we got to the point where this young man decided to try being captain. After someone who thought, I have nothing to offer the world, was captain on an extended mission, 4 different mission experiences, facing some really, really hard things where a lot of people were experiencing failure and death and destruction and having to go over again. But between digging deep into himself, learning to trust himself and not talking himself down, working effectively with other people, and just being able to sit with the discomfort of it, he got to the point where he led his crew to a very creative solution to a very hard situation. And with that, what did he experience? Competence and confidence. Those are things you can try to teach someone, that they should believe in themselves, but real belief, real emotion comes from experience. And while it's true, all of the experiences that were happening in the simulator were simulated, they were also very real because he was with his peers. He was with, in fact, we brought in his adopted parents. They did some of the simulations with him. And those things followed him out. And as I spoke with him as he graduated from Telos U a while back, he talked about the experiences that he had there in the simulator as these catalytic experiences for him trying those same things, taking those same kinds of risks outside in a way that actually improved his life. And he's a different young man today than when we met him. And I'm not saying the simulation was the only thing, but it was a big part of what changed things for him. And one of the things I'm excited about is we're still working with relatively simple tech, with what's being developed in the metaverse. We're working together with, for example, Dimension X to take our controls and our simulation to the next level. Because again, the closer we can develop the stimulus to be what they would be in real life, the better our ability to evoke those real world emotions and responses would be. So we're really excited about what we're already doing and where this is going, and the way that this can reach so many people who are not going to respond well to just one more group therapy session or wouldn't seek out therapy in some other form. And I look forward to seeing how each of you might contribute to the development of these kinds of things. So I just wanted to extend an invitation to all of you. Come by, see what we're doing here. Take a look at our simulator. Come take a flight yourself and see what ideas it sparks in you about what you might be able to help us create to create more good for these people who need it so much. Thank you.